So we wanted to give everybody the chance to know what was going to happen more in advance, like than the week's agenda, but rather say, hey, here's a theme of work for a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, thank you for joining.
Jim, how are you doing?
There we go.
Hey, Jim, can you hear us okay?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
great. Yeah, thanks for joining today.
Sure.
And Jim and Roger, do you know each other?
No.
Well, since we were just talking about like the community survey and things like that, so while we wait a couple more minutes, if you want to do cross intros, that would be great.
So I'm Roger Friedman. I work at the Centers for Disease Control in the Global AIDS Division Information Systems team. I've been an active member of the OpenMRS community and have also done implementation of DHIS2 in Ghana and what else? I don't know. I've been in the architecture calls of OHIE, and facility lists are sort of becoming a hot topic for technical assistance in PEPFAR countries that we support, and so that's a reason why I would like to be more involved here.
Great. Jim, do you want to say a few bits about your work with DHS and interest in the facility registry community?
Sure, yes. I've also have a background with OpenMRS. I've been on the, before joining DHIS, I worked with UCSF in Kenya, where we implemented OpenMRS. Regan Strife in Eldoret at Moi Referral Hospital was kind of our big brother implementation, after which we had patterned ourselves. While in Kenya, I started getting to know DHIS because that was one of the tools involved in my work. And I've been a member of the DHIS development team since last August or so. I am very new in OpenHIE, but I understand that DHIS is used as the de facto facility registry in several countries, and that's an area we're very interested in. DHIS has the FRED facility registry API implemented in our code, and so I'm a bit new to this domain, but very much interested in understanding the right place for DHIS in the facility registry community.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Jim. I appreciate it. Well, I just wanted to mention, since we're just getting started, we typically record these meetings and put them up on YouTube. So just wanted to make sure that was okay with you guys, and let you know, if in the future you ever want to follow along with the conversation, we try to put them up there, and I'll share them through the wiki and through the Google group as well. But is that okay with you guys if we record it?
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Right.
All right, so well, we were talking a little bit about the road mapping survey that we put together. Jim, are you on our facility registry Google group that we have established?
That is a good question. I'm not sure that I know the answer.
Yeah, let me send you the link, because I was just thinking I maybe haven't seen your name.
I got the link to this off the group, so I can easily join.
Yes, please feel free to join. That's kind of a helpful place where you can ask a question, or we can start a discussion, and a lot of kind of the ongoing chatter related to facility registries will be channeled through there. So, but I only bring it up because one of the things that we've been working on this past week was kind of a road mapping survey, where we were asking community members to share their level of interest on different topics that have been brought up in the past and we haven't had a chance to address yet. And I'm not sure if you had a chance to do that survey, but it's never too late, and we'd be happy to gauge your interest in different topics to make sure that the community is kind of honed around those individuals' interests that we want to focus on.
Sounds good. I just joined the group, and I will do the survey.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we appreciate it. Anyways, but we did a quick kind of analysis of the results. And if you start clicking through some of the topics on the Google group, you'll see a quick presentation on just how those topics are categorized based on current level of interest that we have.
Do you want to do the screen share a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Hold on one second.
Since we have it, so having people chase the document. And by the way, Roger, one question. This works for you okay with your computer, but I assume is all CDC, like CDC flavored with all the policies and security and so on?
Actually, I chose not to fight that battle today. I'm using our dirty line with my Chromebook. I figured if Google Hangout couldn't work on a Chromebook, then to hell with it.
Hope is lost. Yes. Okay, understood. No, because we've had people who say they have no problems, and other people who just don't try. So I was wondering, kind of, if you had managed. But anyways, that's a good answer. Okay, Scott, you're sharing the thing?
Yeah. Hold on, just give me 1 second. I need to get my screen sorted out here.
I think I have it handy.
All right, let's see if I can get this going. Can you guys see my screen okay or no?
Ken?
Okay, yeah, it looks good when you talk.
So maybe we should mute so we don't pull it away.
Well, actually, if you click on my little square in the bottom right, it will expand and hold on just my face until you would click off of it in the future.
Okay.
All right, great. Well, I will get started then. So, we just put kind of a quick summary presentation together. And here's kind of a few images of various things we've worked on. The FRED API. We've been working on updating the OHIE website around facility registry work. We have a number of reference implementations for facility registries. There's a facility registry implementation guide that we've been putting together. Specifically, Jim, I'd love to get your feedback on that too. See what you think. I can send you a link after this call. And also kind of an example of the facility registry ecosystem that's starting to evolve around different facility registry applications. So just a few screenshots to summarize that. And here's a bit of our progress to date. Just wanted to kind of summarize some of the things that we've really been focusing on in this community to date. Reference implementations in Tanzania and Rwanda have been a priority for us and starting to see those evolve. As I mentioned, the implementation guide. We've been compiling user stories and data specifications around facility registries in different countries so that we can use those as reference documents to share with that next country that wants to see a facility registry implemented. There's the FRED API, or the Facility Registry API, that we evolved to a version 1.0. As I mentioned, the ecosystem of apps around a facility registry. We spent a good amount of time in the past couple months working on something called CSD, which was a standards profile around how facility data can be shared. Went to a connect-a-thon, helped make sure that we were appropriately complying with the profile and prove that we could actually make our machines talk to each other appropriately. So that was a nice milestone that we hit. And we've also been working on a facility registry website, and there's a sandbox and demo OHIE instantiation out there that's starting to evolve that includes facility registries as well. And so What we wanted to see was, kind of based on the things that we've been working on to date and people have been interested in, where do we go from here? We identified roughly 24 topics, but we also allowed for kind of some, free text answers to, things that maybe we didn't include that individuals wanted us to consider. They kind of range from architecture topics, community building, APIs, security, and various other kind of implementation brown bags for interesting things that groups are doing around facility registry work. We had 11 results, which I think was pretty good for a week of having the survey open, from Tanzania, Rwanda, the Philippines, some PEPFAR folks, CDC, Roger, yourself, and various other partners also jumped in too. And so we scored, each item kind of ranged from high, medium, low, or none as 0, kind of ranging from a score of 4 to 0. And we calculated kind of an aggregate percentile based on the total score for each topic. So what we found was like the two top most interesting items that people responded to were facility registry implementation guidance and how to integrate with the facility registry via APIs. And so I think this wasn't necessarily a huge surprise to us. We've already been starting in on some of these topics, but it's definitely a good reminder that these are important kind of bread and butter topics that we should be focusing on moving forward. And definitely want to make sure that the resources are there for individuals to have and take advantage of, and make sure they know who to ask if they have questions. As I was mentioning about the implementation guide, Roger, thanks for starting to provide some of that feedback. We'll definitely take a look, and Jim, we'd love to get your take on the implementation guide that we're putting together as well. Do you guys have any questions on kind of like these two most important ones, or I guess not most important, but of highest interest to those who responded to our survey, or any kind of additional thoughts or things that we should focus on to try to respond to these?
So I guess I wanted to clarify a little bit. This has to do with the second one with the APIs. Mm-hmm. You've got the FRED API, and you've got the tool that uses basically just the FRED API. And then you've got, but is that the tool that you use for data gathering? For data loading in the system, or is that is there another front end for that?
Yeah, I can answer that and like play out like how the architecture works and how we're observing it kind of evolve in the field as well. Okay, so I'm gonna do something a little trick here. I'm gonna use a page and hold it up as if it were a whiteboard every once in a while.
So click back on Ed's face if you want to see his whiteboard magnified.
Yeah. So the first thing to understand is that the FRED API is a specification, right, that we develop in the community, like absorbing all the needs of the field. But like, for example, our resource map tool or other tools like DHIS or whatever, can choose to implement additional APIs. So in the case of a resource map, which is kind of like the reference implementation for the facility registry, we implement the FRED API, lollipop, if we use that notation, right?
Right.
But we have other APIs as well. Like some of them, for example, are very GIS-centric, and are like, standards that are already developed as part of the GIS community because they want to see, dots on a map expressed in certain formats. Another thing is the native API of the tool itself, which has a subset of it which is similar to the FRED API, but has all the other functionality around the metadata and the management of the data in the tool. For example, in the FRED API right now, you can just query for facilities, update facilities, and things like that. In the tool's native API, you get, for example, the ability to create collections, assign permissions to users, revoke permissions, look at metadata history, and other things that are like a bit more about that implementation. that because of just sequence and where we are in time, the Fred API hasn't gotten to yet. And when we do, we'll design that in a way that's common to all, right? But in the meantime, this tool is deployed in many projects, also beyond the scope of this facility registry community.
And so that's you're calling the registry mapper API?
Yeah. That is a resource map API.
Resource map. I'm sorry.
So that's, you can think of it as a native kind of like product API, and a lot of the tangible kind of experiences that we've been able to bake into the Fred API design came from the fact that there were people using for months or years like the other APIs, because we already knew what were the things we liked and the things we didn't like about how people used it, so we could bake that experience in. And finally, there is other mini APIs on the product, for example, for being able to access audits and things like that, right? That are like a special purpose to subsets of the app. So this kind of clarifies how.
So I'm sorry. So the resource mapper implements multiple APIs, but it's one endpoint. Is that what you're?
Right. It implements multiple APIs, and it implements the Fred API amongst them, just like the HIS implements, I think, the Fred API among other APIs.
Yes.
To support internally, like SDMX HD one, for example.
Yes, I use that one.
Yep. Okay.
And another one to maybe mention is I think there's a specific endpoint for CSD as well.
Yeah. Oh, you're right. Yeah. And then there's another one for there's another lollipop for CSD, so that the CSD information manager, which has a very specific way of getting facility data, can get to it as well. So that is how the APIs are laid out. Now you asked how does this use in the field and what is used for data collection, right? So we see we see a spectrum of different approaches to data entering. One of them is the basic resource map UI, which, even though it's part of the same product, it goes through the APIs just like any other external service. It just happens to be served from the same server, right? But it's just a client-side, HTML and JavaScript UI that happens to use the APIs to do its updates, right? So there's no native thing, but that's good for loading some data. You have the forms, you have the validation, and so on. But it's got doesn't enforce any strange approval workflows, right? And it's just like a very basic CRUD thing. Through the resource map UI, you can also access the APIs to do bulk uploading and bulk updates, right? Where you send in CSVs or massive JSON documents, and things get updated in bulk. So those are the native ones that you can think of come out of the box. Then there is another style, which is to have other apps that are already performing some function in the field contribute data into the facility registry. So let's say, for example, and I'm going to use DHIS as an example, let's say that DHIS is asking people through their forms to say, how many, beds they had, they have this quarter or something, right? And that's part of the form they have in their thing. Then, what you would do is you would configure DHIS to send partial updates for the fields it knows about through the facility registry. That is useful for the subset of fields that those tools manage, and obviously there might be other things that DHIS doesn't manage. Maybe, I don't know, maybe DHIS is better at saying, make sure that the contact information for the manager is up to date, but maybe DHIS doesn't get into as much as stocks and resources and stuff like that. So, we're a fan of making sure that we have the latest and greatest information based on what's being used, because of the virtuous cycle of what gets used gets maintained, and what gets maintained gets used. So if there's other applications that are trustworthy sources of information, that should be kind of, we encourage countries to think about, don't change your whole data entry mechanism, just use this. And then there's special apps and utilities that are designed for data collection and forms and things like that, that are also kind of like connected through the APIs. For example, if you wanted to do queries and updates of the information there via SMS, let's say that there's a particular resource like, I don't know, the stock of antiretrovirals that you want to just update stock on hand via an SMS, or if you wanted to send an update saying, my ambulance is non-functional or my fridge has stopped working, right? You might want to enable simple mobile SMS-like updates for that. And I can show you, if you want, via screen share applications that can connect to ResourceMap via its APIs and let you query and update that information through its own interaction of messages. That way we can keep ResourceMap itself as a high performance, service-oriented service in the proper term, and let these other apps take on different roles. Oh, and finally, there is like country-specific apps, which I'm going to give them their special category because they are kind of also like data entry and data changing apps that perform basic CRUD operations, but do it with very idiosyncratic behaviors that are specific to a country. Kind of like, Roger could set the color of the facility to blue and red, but Jim could only set it to yellow if it is a Tuesday, and with a further approval of the manager, right? And there's only so much sanity a product can bear before it tries to incorporate all that sort of rules in a generic fashion. And the whole strategy of having the APIs is to allow local developers and local ministries of health be able to use all the existing CRUD functionality and everything in the API, but have, through the security models and through the underlying metadata model, enough information to drive their own UI and their own level of permissions based on these kind of policies and rules that we don't want to make a business out of maintaining centrally, because it ends up being a huge sustainability and maintenance tax. And an example of that is like the UCC app in Tanzania for the apps and utilities. For example, MBuilder is one, and then there's others. For example, ResourceMap exposes the schema as an XForms, right? So you could very easily, from ODK and stuff, connect to it as well. And then other apps might include like things like DHIS, LMISs, another thing that already are interacting with the users. So I guess this is a good slide to update in our deck, Scott, as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. Roger, any follow-up questions from that, or did that answer your question?
Well, the question that really got me trying to understand this is suppose that you want to have a geographical hierarchy selection. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, at the Fred level, there isn't any geographical hierarchy selection, but I could see putting the geographical hierarchy into XML and having it incorporated into the description of the Fred resource, like an include file or something, so that you could go from country to country and replace the working hierarchy with just on the basis of this include file. And so I guess sort of what I'm thinking is, is that part of the resource mapping back end, or is this part of the front end? I'm a little bit concerned is that it seems like everything turns into a development project, and it seems like we shouldn't have to repeat that development process everywhere.
No, yeah. No. One thing, Roger, I think to bring in, I'll show you. Let me screen share for a second, Scott, if you're okay, and detail that. I think it's important for Roger to understand this. So, no, first of all, I mean, ourselves culturally, and also like the intent of the whole community, is to really help have the existence of open source products that people can just use and don't need to muck around with code for the 99% of the use cases. And for those that are like very custom and very idiosyncratic, just allow them to do it via APIs. But obviously, hierarchy management is not one that merits that sort of stuff. Let me screen share here for a second, and I'll quickly scramble to put on the page the sort of stuff that we want. So what you're looking at here, can you see a browser? Google?
Not yet.
There we go.
There we go. So you're looking here at a cloud-hosted instance of ResourceMap that we maintain for many of our customers, and the list on the left just happens to be some collections I have access to. In my position, I don't get to do much real work, so usually it's demos and things that people allow me to peek into. And Scott, for example, has been working a lot with Tanzania on their implementation, and they've allowed me to access to see what's going on in here. So I'm going to go just into the schema here while I'll bring in the facilityregistry.org, and also I'm going to preload some things here. So we have this here. Give it 1 second. Facility registry API, facility object, and here I want metadata, and there you go. Okay, so here's the metadata of the Tanzania facility registry. Okay.
Can you make that larger?
Sure. Is this better?
Getting there. Okay, probably can read almost everything now.
Yeah, if you double-click the window and make it larger, and then you double-click the thing, it might.
I can do it on my side.
Oh, you have a Chromebook.
Yeah.
Okay. So let me see one more. Oh, it went. Okay. So here you have all the metadata that the Tanzanian Ministry of Health chose to make part of their facility schema, right? It includes these subsets of information like identifiers, contact information, physical location, classification, and so on. This includes can you see this? It's huge on my screen. I have to step a foot back. There you go. You can see here the administrative divisions have all the the hierarchy that's intended for the admin divisions of Tanzania, and obviously you could have other hierarchies if you needed to, for whatever purposes, either because you might have admin hierarchies from different years through different projects, a health hierarchy versus an admin hierarchy, who knows. The whole point is that a particular facility is tagged with membership in different admin, leaves and nodes, not even leaves, any node, right? And a particular facility can be linked to nodes in multiple hierarchies. Just to give you another example of how they use hierarchies here, they set up there a whole, where is it? Like the services offered? No, it's the facility type, for example, is another hierarchy that they set up, right? Where they have, like you can see on the right here, like how they're breaking it down, into a hierarchy and so on. And so you can see how this is expressed here. In the Fred API, right, with our V1 effort to date, we're able to get to the point where we can get to what, I guess what is called the signature domain in a way, which has all the information about identifiers, across different contexts of identifiers, and then purposefully, because we want to make sure that what is kind of expressed in the API is something that we can all agree to. Things like the properties that would point to nodes in hierarchies were kind of like left out of the scope of the first Fred API. We said, if you have a particular property which happens to be a node identifier in a hierarchy, that's great. But for the moment, we're just trying to make sure that we can share the existence of facilities and how they're identified and match them up. And we, purposefully left, kind of like where they fall in a hierarchy and stuff like that, until we had resolved those more fundamental problems. And that's part of what we hope to work in this year. To give you an idea of some of the examples of how this is done in the resource map API, which is ahead, right, in the sense of like it had to already represent more requirements. You would have fields like in JSON or in XML, and I'm going to expand this so you can read it a bit better. That would point to those nodes in hierarchies, and then in addition, one of the other things we have in the roadmap for the community that Scott just put together. I opened up metadata here. We need to, have the ability to query the metadata itself, so that you can see. Wait a second, it's so big I can't even see where I'm standing. There you go. Sorry. You can see the actual metadata, and you could see all the fields that are representing that. So let me give you this same view, and this is just a user interface view, right?
Mm-hmm.
Over an API. So if I just do this, if I guessed the syntax right, whoa, there you go. You will see that same UI expressed as, well, you saw it for a second. I guess it's parsing and trying to make it into nice JSON. There we are. You can see all the fields here, and you can see that administrative division is a sort of field, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has all sort of like metadata, and then you can start seeing here the actual hierarchy manifest itself with all the containing links between the different nodes, right? So I think that what you're asking for is exactly on the money for the sort of things that we want to see in Freight API, but this is already but the products are already designed to have the hierarchies be a dynamic things that are managed by users, multiple hierarchies simultaneously, accessible via APIs. And this is how the Ministry of Health of Tanzania tools act, for example. They go and they make a query saying, tell me what your hierarchy looks like. Then they keep internally which users can see which districts or something like that, right? Scott, correct me if I'm like misunderstanding the requirements.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, oh, if like Johnny can only see the Bahi district, then they enforce different triggers and workflows when he tries to update a facility under Bahi, versus when he tries to update a facility not under Bahi. And that's a sort of automation and the sort of non-code development that we're all hoping to get to. And we're not hoping, we're getting to in this tool quite tangibly. But that we want to see distilled all the experience into the Freight APIs so that all products that want to act as facility registries can do it uniformly.
Okay.
Does that help quell your concern? Because we would be very concerned if we were going in that direction too.
No. It's I mean, and maybe concern is the wrong word. I mean, but it, I was more interested in sort of like the allocation of the responsibility between the different pieces. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
this is, this product and its tools are a lot more loosely coupled than OpenMRS is.
Yes.
So I'm, and already in OpenMRS you can spend a lot of time figuring out what it is you're looking for actually is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm still getting oriented to those questions in this environment.
Perfect. Yeah, it's a more service-oriented thing, so it's very important to have things in the right spot, and when it's okay for things to be replicated around it, as long as it's clear what the owner is, right? And other things is like, because of that importance of understanding who the owner is, we're working on the, we already have the APIs in the core product, but we want to work this year on norming the APIs to make these sort of metadata definitions like hierarchies synchronized. So let's say, for example, that in a given country, let's say it's Zambia, people spend a lot of time in DHIS curating the hierarchy, right? And them in that country, that is the place where the current understanding of the true hierarchy lies, right? Then it's a responsibility of the facility registry to be able to extract that hierarchy, definition and synchronize it internally, knowing it comes from the outside, but incorporating it and allowing users to work with it in native fashion. And then whenever DHIS folks decide to update and publish the next version of the hierarchy, depending tools like the facility registry could, should extract that and synchronize it their own data sets as well. Or vice versa. In some countries, they might say, look, the way I organize my facilities in a hierarchy is expressed to the hierarchy of the facility registry, and I just want DHIS to sync with that one. And what we're working on with the people who do the terminology services aspect of OHIE is in making sure that we're, just like we did the FRED API to exchange facility data, we're seeing if we can work on ways to exchange this metadata and the metadata around hierarchies and things like that to allow whoever is the responsible party for keeping that piece of information up to date, allow them to have a standard way of exposing it so that other consuming systems can be beholden to that responsibility.
Okay. And I guess the other thing that I was sort of interested in is, if you take a look at DHIS as an example, okay, so in DHIS, you've got a facility registry, you have data element and indicator definitions and forms for entering that data, and you've also got a data warehouse for making cross-sectional and longitudinal data sets out of those indicators and so on. And then you've got an AVR piece as well for doing mapping and stuff like that, which is, it's quite a lot of capability, Jim. So that's we love it, or I love it at least, pretty much love it. But the thing is that I guess I want to, when I look at the implementation documentation, okay, what I'm sort of not seeing is, let's suppose where you have parallel systems, okay, or where your data warehouse is being done by extract, an ETL process, okay, or where the facility registry is a participant in this, but not necessarily, where your project, let me see if I can state this in a straighter way, where your project of building the facility registry is being done coincidentally with developing substantive area data that doesn't belong to the facility registry, belongs to the substantive area. So so that's the kind of software that I was looking to see, because it looks like, the properties right now are all stored in the same data store as the signature domain, as far as I can tell, So is there some sort of way that we can say, okay, I'm the facility registry, I'm going to store the facility data, and I'm going to pass this other data over? Or is this something that's going to be done in the front end that says, okay, I've gathered facility data and I've gathered malaria data. I'm going to send the facility data to the facility registry and the malaria data to the malaria registry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see your question. Yeah. Maybe I can answer with some examples that we've been working in. So I think it's very important in these kind of like service-oriented environments to make sure that the responsibilities of a service are very kind of circumscribed and well-defined, right? So one example of, I think similar to what you're discussing is ComCare, right? The mobile tool, and are you familiar with them?
No.
Okay, so they're a mobile tool for patient health collection, and they do referrals, and they're tools for community health workers to collect basic data and get basic instructions about what to do with patients, right?
Right.
And one of the things that community health workers do in the field is referrals, right? They have to send people to a clinic, to a lab, and so that is an application that has its whole domain of data collection and storage and information. They don't want to be a facility registry, but they need up-to-date facility information, right, to do referrals well.
Right.
And so the people who make ComCare change their tool to be a client of the Fred API. And therefore, if in a country there is a facility registry and a tool that supports that API, like ResourceMap or like DHIS, and they're keeping the facilities in there, and they're normed about how they manage service metadata, like where do you provide tuberculosis labs, where do you provide maternal child health services, and so on. They can query that, and then they can cache it in their devices, and then when people are getting a referral, they can get to the nearest one or the one that's open and stuff like that. And that application manages its own data, it manages its own workflows, right? It will not store information related to those facilities, like pending referrals or anything, in the facility registry, because that's not the role of the facility registry. All they're doing is they're subscribing to one feed that lets them know when there's substantive changes to the facility list, like there's updates to which services are provided where, or there's when a facility gets added or deleted, right? And whenever that event triggers, they go back into the facility registry and it's like, okay, tell me what's going on, or tell me the new information about this facility that's being added. And therefore, they can query real time, or they can keep a cached query of that information without imposing data that is not about our facility registry into the facility registry tool itself. But of course, that's a line that different implementations and tools have to do. Like, we're fans of like keeping everything in its place for everything and everything in its place, so to speak. But sometimes, especially when you get through the first implementations of having these services in a country, people might go like, hey, I have the facility registry here. Why not store information about X while we're at it, right? And we just want to make sure that people understand that, say, look, okay, it's okay if you want to put it in like that database, but you have to understand that now that database is not just a facility registry, it's a facility registry and stuff. And probably that means that you would have to eventually look at where that stuff has to go. For example, a logistics management tool, like a supply chain tool, right, has all sorts of metadata and information and events and stuff around facilities that don't belong in a facility registry, but it really needs up-to-date facility data to operate well. And part of the goal of having all of these APIs is to allow that dotted line to be drawn more precisely. Am I answering your question, or?
No, you're answering it quite well. The big question that I have, and I'm sorry if I'm eating up all the time, Jim, if you have questions, but it's like when I'm looking at the implementation guide, the question is, what is being implemented? Okay, and it's really hard to tell from the guide what is. And so
DHIS implementation guide?
The
No.
Facility Registry Implementation Guide. Scott just put a link in the chat to make sure we were all looking at it.
Sure.
Yeah, yeah. So like so sort of like the naive point of view is like, a country decides it's going to maintain a central facility registry that it might not have done before. Okay, a common one, and you just want to define and populate in essence, the signature domain and the hierarchies and some very close to facility stuff. Other places, it's like, well, they're going to go ahead and do this, but they're also going to be doing it in conjunction with the fact that they're doing a capital asset list, and they're going to go to each facility and actually put asset tags on all of the property and record it and stuff like that. So in that case, the facility registry implementation project is really in their mind like the asset identification and tracking system implementation. Am I being at all clear? I mean, like, those are like two different use cases that produce a facility registry, right? And that's like, I'm sure the people in PEPFAR, when they look at master facility lists, they want to get back their data for partner monitoring data. Okay, in their mind, they don't distinguish between the facility list and the data for partner monitoring. But as hopefully we're a little more interested in good design practices, and we do know the difference between those two things. And so how do we how do we present that, and how do we make sure that happens?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that's the example that you bring up around asset tracking or other MFL type of goals, like secondary goals for, why do we want an MFL, why do we want a facility registry, really highlight, the same issue with, there's a number of e-health systems that essentially act in silo of each other. They all want a standardized list of facilities and their related signature or infrastructure related details, but they're all collecting them in isolation of each other. And I think those new projects that come along that also say, hey, I really need a master facility list, and I would like to get that from a facility registry via these APIs, so that I can make sure I'm using that standardized list that's up to date, and I don't necessarily have to worry about what all those other systems out there are also documenting in terms of facility data, are great kind of motivators and use cases that help show the value of a facility registry. And like, what I would say in those types of situations is, like, yes, one of your use cases here is, I need a facility registry, but then perhaps there's also like a secondary aspect where you want to collect asset information for every microscope across your country, for example, or something. And whether you lump that into a facility registry or they kind of operate in a service-oriented way, I think should be kind of determined by the requirements of the country and how exactly they're going to collect data. I don't necessarily see them as like having to be the same thing. I would see, hey, why not set up a facility registry and figure out how you're going to track all those microscopes and everything, and use the APIs to transmit that facility list between those two kind of components. Ed, I don't know if you want to add anything else to that, but I just see that as like a great motivator for why we really need a facility registry in that country, because you start to see these new projects and things that really could benefit from it, and they're seeing it as like kind of a limitation for what they require to move forward and actually successfully implementing it.
So again, if I know that we're running over time, but so like, I see it as sort of running between a Scylla and a Charybdis. Okay, so the Scylla is the country that that sees it, gets it, and is really enthusiastic and wants to go ahead and put all of its data into a facility-based information system. Okay, so that the project is completely undoable because it involves getting an infinite number of data elements from an infinite number of sites. and the Charybdis is the country that doesn't give a hoot about a facility registry and is completely computer illiterate and doesn't understand the value to systems developers of having a centralized data source for that sort of thing. And you can't really sell a facility registry. What you have to sell is the asset list, or the the monthly report, or of patients seen, or whatever it is that they see the value in. And in the process, you'll be developing the facility registry that the next group that comes in can build on to build their particular piece on. So I guess to me that's like the implementation guide has to deal from both sides. People who want to take sort of an existing facility list and unify it and can think from the facility side, and people who don't really think about the facility side at all, think only about the substantive information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I think we found that to be a challenge in kind of our messaging of like helping to explain just like conceptually what is a facility registry, how it operates as a service, and how do we link that into a lot of the motivating factors for why someone might consider it, and how do they consider it if they don't really understand what it is or how it can support them long term. But I agree. I think that's a critical kind of angle that we should try to incorporate in the implementation guide, and I'd love to brainstorm with you on how we can best kind of incorporate that type of I don't know, I guess like different mechanisms for how motivations are driven around facility registries. Well, guys, we're kind of wrapping up towards the end of our hour. We didn't make it very far through our survey results. Perhaps we can.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No.
That was the topic.
Roger, this is great because we love to just kind of put things out there and let the conversation follow the interest amongst those who join. So no worries. But maybe we can follow up with the rest of that during our next call. But maybe before we wrap up, excuse me, I got a bit of a cold here. Jim, I didn't know if you had any kind of questions or follow-up thoughts. Just wanted to give you a second to add anything in that you'd like to.
I appreciate it. Basically, I've enjoyed just listening today and starting to get more into the headspace of what it is you're talking about. I will definitely check out the implementation guide and the survey. Mm-hmm. I think the bottom line is I'm just still trying to find my way and to understand what best is DHIS's role in the facility registry, given that that we function as a registry in many places, and of course want also to be able to work with the resource mapper where that's appropriate. And so I'm basically still in learning information gathering mode most of the time, so I appreciated the call.
Yeah, no problem. And if it would ever be helpful to have kind of a ad hoc meeting on the side, we'd be happy to do that too, and just chat through what all's going on in the community and answer any other questions you have too.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Okay, great. Roger, any closing thoughts or questions?
Well, thank you very much. It's been useful, and will certainly help orient me toward the rest of the comments.
Absolutely. Well, great. Well, thank you for joining. And I guess just to recap a bit from our side, we are, I think during our next call in 2 weeks, perhaps we can run through the rest of the survey results. I might take a stab at starting to draft a little bit of a roadmap for the community to review, for you guys on the call and people also listen in via YouTube later. So just for everybody's knowledge, we'll probably try to start drafting that roadmap of a series of these kind of community calls, and then maybe some side meetings for more specific topics that we want to make sure get attention, but maybe aren't as widely of interest to the broader community. So. But yeah, just want to thank you guys for joining, and feel free to, if you know anyone else who would be interested in these type of conversations, to let them know how to find us. Ed, anything you want to add to close this?
No, thank you. Sorry for having maybe taken too much time, like answering some of these questions. But I think it's always useful when we get the high level ones to just get a chance to see where our answers are, and see them evolve over the years. It's and some of these things will be useful to put in the general community presentations, I feel.
I agree. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, thank you everybody for joining today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. See you guys.